This is a very exciting event. Welcome. This is the first workshop that the RFOT program, Relational Focusing Oriented Therapy program, is hosting and presenting. And we're going to be talking about theory, which is an essential middle ground for therapy. Often in the focusing world, we talk about practice, detail of interaction, and we talk, especially recently, more and more about philosophy, the more abstract level of thinking. And theory is in the middle. So theory is a body of ideas, stories, explanations that's always informing our work, whether we're aware of it or not aware of it. Philosophy is the inquiry about how those ideas and theories are made and how they're used. It's the theory about the theories. Would that be a good way of saying it? And so we're going to spend our time this afternoon in this middle ground. I have some papers that you might have gotten that were around somewhere that were notes of mine for a presentation about theory as a mother. And this idea Jean and I came up with last year. We were talking about how for many people, theory is like a dead sort of patriarchal set of rules that stands over one in the midst of one's most difficult moments in treatment and sort of admonishes you or questions you and tells you often that you're doing it wrong, the thing you need most in those terrible moments, right? And we want theory not to be that, but to be a nurturing parent that guides and helps and nurtures your work. To give you an idea about theory, which is present implicitly and explicitly, my patient, who is usually very compliant, comes in one day and says, as she hands me a check, "I don't know why I have to pay you for therapy. I don't think it's fair. What is this anyway?" That's one of those moments, right? And in my experience of the moment, there are all of these theories that I may not even be thinking about or aware of, but that are there. My feminist background, in which my colleagues and I really examined the nature of power and money and how it informs the work of therapy. I might think about Bernie Brancheft, who is a self-psychological theorist who talks about what he calls the pathological structures of accommodation and how people who have accommodated to the needs of primary people in their lives from very, very early infancy or maybe even before birth, how important it is for those people to be able to name that compliance and begin to distinguish themselves and even rebel against the needs of the important people in their lives. So I might think of Bernie Brancheft. I might be thinking about the idea of empathic attunement as a central guiding principle in therapy. But then something else might come in there about, but what about confrontation? And what about the need to be someone that the patient can push up against? What about the self-delineating self-object function that might be in there? And then maybe my first supervisor who said, many, many, many years ago when we talked this way, the frame is what's important, and you should bill your patients on time, and everything should be very accounted for, which some people know I'm not the best at that. And that theoretical thought might be very undermining in that moment if I was vulnerable. I might call on some of those thoughts or ideas, or I might not be thinking about them at all, but they'll be informing my felt sense of this moment. And so it's very important for us to know what our theoretical basis is, to know what's informing us, and to be able to think out the theories that are partnering with us. Theory as a mother is the idea that that theory can be something that we have a relationship with, something that's living and breathing, something that's changing, something that we create too, that we further, that we argue with, that we think about differently at different times in our lives. It's an open thing, not a closed thing. Also, I think it's important to know that unlike a biological mother where you only have one, theory, you have more than one. There are sometimes many theories, like in my example, and at least a few that are parents that we choose. And these parents, like our parents from childhood, may not always agree with each other. They may be arguing and fighting with each other. And when we have a living relationship with theory, that's okay. They don't have to agree. We can still use them creatively. We can use theory creatively when we make it our own, when we have a relationship with it, when we use it experientially. So I'd like you to have some of the ideas from my little handout in mind about the theoretical framework that Jean is presenting today, and is it apparent for you? Can it be useful? How would you use this in therapy? What might you add to it? What might you disagree with? So we're going to hear from Jean 3 theoretical points, and then we're going to have a little demonstration, which will be a therapy demonstration, and that little demonstration will help us to ground these ideas in something that we're experiencing, because theory and practice and philosophy all have to be one amalgam in order to be working right. And then we're going to have a break, and after that you can bring whatever you would like theory to explain, or any of your thoughts or ideas or questions.
So hello. So I plan to start right in and talk theory and come back later to what is philosophy and all that stuff, but I can't stand to do it. I'm a philosopher, and so I have to start by saying all theories are sometimes wrong. Like mothers, of course, too, are sometimes wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
So perhaps one more thing I need to say is, if you really believe a theory, then it's wrong. And we can come back to that. That has to do with how to use theory, what good is it not. And Lynn really said that already. She said, well, if you have many and they conflict, then you're in good shape. You know, if the parents disagree, the child is free. All right. The first point I want to make has a name, and the name of it is interaction is first. Interaction first. So what does that mean? I'll come back to it. The theoretical question is, why does therapy work when it works? And that's the question. Now look what I do. First, I get very specific about how I would like that question to go before I try to answer it. So how I would like it to go is, why would it help anybody to talk about, to express their trouble. And this is, of course, what the person who doesn't know anything about therapy would ask you. You know, yeah, well, whenever I get into those things, I just feel bad. So I go and I pay you to tell you all these things, and it's just going to make me feel bad, isn't it? And the usual answer to that would be, you're a doctor, you're a wise guy, you're going to tell me some solutions that I can't think of. And we all know that isn't quite true, right? So the question is, if the therapist or the listener, whoever that might be, is not going to give answers to the person's problems, because we don't really know any answers, what is going on such that it sometimes helps to do this, right? It's probably the first question you ever thought of. It can't be a question that you haven't thought about. You know, this person's going to come, they're going to tell me all their troubles, they're going to cry, they're going to complain, they're going to be stuck, and then they're going to say, well, doctor, what do I do? And then I'm not going to know what to do, and there isn't anybody who's ever practiced who hasn't thought about that. And the question theoretically is, well, what is supposed to work here? What is supposed to happen such that this paradox works, such that going into and feeling all over again all these bad things will make you better? What is that? What happens there? Theoretically, my answer, don't forget all theories are sometimes wrong, my answer is that a human being is not a box full of content. Whether you call them experiences or feelings or dynamic circuits or whatever, however you want to think about what I call the content. A human being is not the content. A human being is interaction. And notice that I'm violating the grammar by saying that. I'm supposed to say a human being is in interaction, because the word interaction is so structured grammatically that there's supposed to be an A and then a B and then they interact. And instead of that, I'm saying something strange. I'm saying, no, I think we are interactions. I think living bodies are interactions with the air and the ground and the food and other species members. I think we are interactions. And from that point of view, if you look at a person, like if you're looking at me, you can see that I'm interaction, right? I've got these eyes and these hands and these feet on the ground and these sexual organs and this inhaling, exhaling, and this sweating out and taking in. You see it? I am interaction. And not just on the physical level. I'm interaction with other people. 9 months with my mother before I was even born. And then everybody else. The people in my so-called head, which is really further down than just my head. All those people from the past and my present life and you people here. And then I am also a special kind of interaction with myself. So while I'm talking, that's going on more below. But when I stop, right away I talk to myself. I say, do you think you said it? Do you think that made sense to them? Do they look like they're, you know? So that too is interaction. Now, when I think of a person as being interaction, then of course it makes sense that in interacting with a new person, they're going to be different, right? Now they taught us that we're supposed to be an integrated individual and that it's really too bad that we're so different with different people, but I don't think anybody ever got past there. If you sense yourself in different relationships, how different you are with different people. And what different things they would say about you too from that difference. You know, it isn't so much that different friends of mine have different perspectives. I'm different with them. They're all telling you more or less some mix of the truth and their own, of course. So my job then as a therapist is to be the kind of interaction that we would expect to make the person better. Do you follow me? Now the puzzle, the paradox is solved. We understand now that it isn't that the person is going to lay out all their bad things and as a result of that they'll be better. Rather, the person is going to lay out all their bad things to me, or with me, or at me. And even if I don't say anything, it's a very different thing to do that with another person. Of course, then next we want to ask, well, what kind of person, and so on, and we'll get to that. But with each person, really, it's different, and it's very different from doing it alone. In the first way of saying it, it seems like a puzzle. A person's going to say the same thing to you that they've said to themselves, and then they'll pay you and go home. And what is that? But actually, the content is not the person. The content is different even if it sounds the same. Even if the person says all the same words that they said to themselves alone in their room, it's different to say them to you. It's a different living process. And that's where the possibility of change exists. And you all know that, but theoretically speaking, I'm doing something important. I'm setting up concepts that are different than the usual concepts. I'm saying a person is an interaction on many levels, physical, interpersonal, and with themselves, and with you. And I'm saying, secondly, that the content is a different living process, even if it sounds the same. And being myself a focusing person and having focusing partnerships, I have at least, I can't get along with less than 2 of them. A focusing partnership, you probably know, is a certain time on the phone when we share time. And I get 25 minutes and she gets 25 minutes. And that usually comes, for me, rather later in the day, so that I've already done my own focusing by myself. And I do pretty well because focusing is also an interaction. And so when I do that, something different happens. And I get further. If I start in a bad place, I dig myself out. I get better. And then I have my partnership time. And so as a research person, I brag about this mysteriously. I say I have a wonderful, ideal research project. Because I have a research subject who's willing to go to 5,000 trials, which you never can find somebody willing to do otherwise. You know, and is also controlled. So it's the same person on the same day, in the same temperature, with the same diet, in the same season. Everything is the same, except that first I have him do it alone, and with focusing even, he knows, and then I have him do it in the partnership, and he practically always, not always, but practically always gets further in the partnership, because it's a different way of being alive with the same thing, and things become possible there that weren't possible when I did it alone. And you all know this. But theoretically, it's important to say that from your practice, you know that human beings really are not the stuff that most theories tell you. I don't care whether it's Freudian dynamics or Jungian archetypes or behavior circuits or what in the world ever you think a person is, they're not that. Now what I say they are, well, they're also not that, because it's a theory. I'm saying they're interaction. And why is that valuable? Because then I can say next something that, again, changes how we think about it. I'm saying the same content is a totally different living process, a totally different physiological process. You can measure it that way if you want to. A totally different process of being alive, even though it can, at least at the beginning, have the very same words, the very same context, the very same feelings, if you want, so-called. Because these feelings happen inside of the interaction, and they also, when the person is alone, happen inside the kind of interaction that that person has with themselves. So the type of interaction that I typically have with myself when I look at certain things is that I blame myself, and I feel sort of constricted, and I feel like shame on me. I should have been able to fix this 40 years ago. And well, in that kind of attitudinal interaction, I don't usually do very well, right? The content doesn't. And then if I can get to focusing attitudes, and if I can catch myself, and if I can say, now wait, this is not it at all. You have to stand over here where everything is murky, and I wait for something fresh to come out of there. The very attitude of waiting for something fresh gets me out of all that bad interaction with myself, and I'm waiting there, and then something comes, and then I'm surprised and sort of interested, and then I can make my interaction with myself be a different kind of living process than the one I typically start with. You following me? And then when I get my focusing partner, well, then it's again a completely different interaction. And once in a while she's too quiet, and I say, wait, I'm losing you, say something. Tell me what's the weather over there. Lives in a different city. I need to be different in the interaction. And I have a tendency, if I don't hear back and forth, I have a tendency to get autistic again, like there's nobody there. On the other hand, if she says too much about the content, then we have what I call transference, which is that I get mad, or I get upset, or I get stuck, or I do something or other, and then we have to work on that side of it. Go in and see what happened there to me. So I don't want her to say much, but I need her to say something pretty regularly so that I don't lose track. All this is familiar to you, I know. But theoretically, my 2 points might not be so familiar. A human being is an interaction, not the content. Secondly, the same content is a completely different physiological and psychological and personal and electrical and every other thing we are living process, a different living process. Because it is a different interaction. So, for example, in recent years it's become understood that just repeating your trauma is re-traumatizing. Now, not everybody knows this yet, but a lot of people are nodding. It's necessary to be sure, if we're going to relive the trauma, that we're reliving it in a wider, thicker, present, as a wider, thicker, present interaction. That's when it's going to heal. If it's just repeating and there is no relational thickness, then it's re-traumatizing. That's the same point which I'm theoretically explaining. Okay? And incidentally, I'm saying, what is theory good for? Well, theory is very good, what you said too, to support you in what you're doing. But what marks theory for me is that when I lay it out in front of me in these terms, then I get to say, oh, that explains it. And that's what I'm trying to say. You know this, but I'm explaining it. And that has a certain value. In fact, it has 5 or 6 values, because then you can go on from there and you can explain other things, and you can do things and build things in the world. Theory is very precious. I'm explaining it. At the same time, I've said all theories are at least partly wrong. So the very experience of explaining, you need to have with you, yeah, but probably doesn't explain everything. Or probably the minute I have another thought or two, I'll see that it didn't explain that, or something like that. But the explaining is valuable. And this is good for me to emphasize. If you're looking for me to tell you something new about practice, I'm not doing that. I know you know this, what I said. But I'm explaining what you already knew. I'm explaining it by saying human beings are interaction. And furthermore, the same content as a different interaction is a different happening. It's a different existence. It's a different life happening. And therefore, a person can change when they are being a new interaction. Now I'm going to make a third point. I'm going to say, when two people are interacting in a room together, or otherwise, there is only one interaction, even though there are two people. Because the interaction is first. And the people can be derived from the interaction. So if you say, well, who or what were you being there with this person? Say my client goes home and I'm sort of not satisfied and I'm investigating what happened and I'm saying, well, who were you? And what were you? I was whatever I was in that interaction. And so was my client. We are derivable, of course not in every way and not in my past and all the kinds of things, but we are derivable from the interaction. There's only one interaction and two people. So if you interview the two people, they'll tell you violently different things, but they're talking from the same interaction. There's only one interaction. So when Carl Rogers put up his theory of three conditions, empathy, genuineness, and positive regard or something, he added a condition. He said, but the client must perceive those conditions. And I was in therapy at the time and I argued with him. I said, it's not true. The client does not have to perceive the conditions. The client can be absolutely clear that the therapist is not positive about the client and does not care about him and is not genuine, and still the therapy will work if the therapist is actually positively attuned and genuine and empathetic. And at that time, I didn't have the theory. I only had, but it took me 1.5 years before I ever perceived these conditions. How did I get there in my therapy? I was absolutely sure that this nice middle-class, mid-century, lovely man couldn't possibly understand me, this monstrous thing that I was. So if you'd interviewed me then, I would have said, no, none of these conditions obtain. In retrospect, I know they were there. There has to be a way for somebody to get from to, right? I'm saying the interaction is much more basic than the perception that the two people have of each other. If you want to know what the interaction is, you have to sense it. You have to feel it. You have to say to yourself, what's going on with me here now? Then you can feel it. And then if it's unsound, you can find where it's unsound. Oh, I'm getting all tight. Or, oh, I'm withdrawing. Or, oh, I wish I weren't here. Or, well, that's not the kind of interaction that's going to help anybody. Oh, so well, why do you wish you weren't here? What's happening? Oh, you're scared. Oh, this or that. And we all do that again. And that's interacting with ourselves to get whole so we can. So I'm asserting that if you can make the kind of interaction that's going on the kind from which you can expect that somebody would be better, then you're doing the job. Okay, and then on the practice we can talk later, but you're all sophisticated about this. Now I want to make a second theoretical point. I thought I would have questions in between, but now I think I'll go through because otherwise it'll take too long. My second point is that experience is a carrying forward. The first point was called interaction first. My second point is called carrying forward. Now, carrying forward is a theoretical term that I made up, which turns out to be extremely useful. Almost everybody that ever hears it starts using it, because almost everything in life is neither the same, nor exactly different. Most things have to do with carrying forward and how the carrying forward works. I use carrying forward for when life moves forward. So if I say to myself, well, and this is what I am doing, I say to myself, okay, you wanted to tell them about carrying forward. Now, did you do that? Then I get a distinct sense that yes, as far as you've gone, it carries forward it carries your feeling about carrying forward. You follow me? It's like I started to talk, and when we speak, except in very rare times when we write out what we're going to say, when we speak directly from the body. Have you noticed that? You open your mouth and the words come out, and if they don't come, you're stuck, because we speak directly. So I'm speaking directly from my sense that, oh, I'm going to tell them about carrying forward. I've done this many times before, so I'm I can rely on it. Something will come. But then when I hear myself say it, then I say, well, do you think you told them? And it says, up to here it's okay, but the point isn't through yet. Okay, so I come back and I say, all right, now, the point, but see, I don't know what's coming. I have to let it come. The point is that what will carry something forward that you feel or think or are or live, what will carry it forward is not really known in advance. And since we know a lot about ourselves, we often think we do know. So for instance, last week, one of my clients said, I'm afraid to call him. She wants a date with him, but he didn't call her back. I'm afraid to call him, and I don't know why. Because, I say to myself, well, what would you lose if you called him? And of course, it's true. She wouldn't lose anything if she called him. But I said, well, that's what you and I think, because I do too. I always put myself in there, if it's true. I said, well, you and I think that you wouldn't lose anything if you called them. But let's use the same phrase quietly and come here and say again, what would you lose if you called him? And then it didn't take very long, and she said, it would hurt my pride. That's the difference. To say you wouldn't lose anything does not carry forward. It looks like it would. It's a reasonable thing. It's like, look here, you're betting $1, you're going to get $1 back. You don't lose anything. Come on, let's go. No, down here it's different. Carrying forward, and again, you know this, but I'm giving you a concept for it. When you say something back to your client, that you've carried them forward. Or when you say something to your client and then you know that you didn't. Right? Now you can still be right, you can try again, you can say it 3 times, but if it never carries forward, don't. Instead of that, say, well, what do you have there where I'm pointing? Because so often we say very useful, very good things to people, and they're totally useless and wrong because we don't invite them to go there where we're pointing and say, well, what do you have there? Because what is always there is a texture with, or whatever you want to call it, a massive experience, an ongoing living process that is always more and more ordered and more complicated than anything we can ever say or think. So if you say something that's absolutely right, it may still take 5 or 6 what I call carrying forward steps. And then the person may be able to use what you said, but it'll still be really different. Because after 5 or 6 steps in there, the most you're going to feel is, oh, I was in the right direction. Oh yeah, I knew it would have to be something like that. But what comes will be so much more specific and have their taste to it, and it'll be all different, and nothing that you could ever have said yourself And yet you can often have the satisfaction, oh, I was looking in the right direction, all right. Or the other half of the time, you're all wrong totally. The road turns and turns again and turns again, and you're in this totally different place. But carrying forward steps is what I want to make a concept for. And these are life process steps. Carrying forward is life moving forward. And you can feel that. It's like exhaling when you're holding your breath, or it's like inhaling when you haven't breathed. It's like eating when you're hungry. It's like going to the bathroom when you need to. It has a continuity to it that you don't make up. And we all know this. Everyone knows this. But in the territory of situations and other people and ourselves and all our trouble, there we don't seem to know this, you know. Nobody ever says to themselves, well, this is healthy food, so I think today I'll just eat instead of going to the bathroom. It doesn't occur to anybody. Because we know that this carries forward this way and that carries forward that way. And, right? Okay, now there are many subtleties to look in there but you know all this. I am making a theoretical concept to say life is not just static. It carries forward. And when it gets stuck, it wants to carry forward. I call it implies a carrying forward step that hasn't happened yet. And maybe it'll never happen, but it pushes for it, wants it, implies it, hints it. It makes you all kinds of messes because it needs some kind of carrying forward there, and that hasn't come to set the time in advance. Because when I'm focusing with myself, I get to a certain place, I'm all clear, okay, now I can work, goodbye. But my time with my partner is 25 minutes, and I get there in 10 minutes. What am I going to do with all this time? And it always makes me laugh. It's like, well, that's the biggest function of a therapist, is to keep the person stuck there for the whole 50 minutes when they would otherwise go away, you know? And so then being there and not knowing what to say, and after a while you sort of, at least with me, people get used to the fact that it's okay, you know, and I'll say, you're there and you don't know what to say and I'm here, and that's very important that you're there and I'm here, and that's wonderful that you don't know what to say. I know you might be very uncomfortable, but that's still, they get used to it. And then they can be there, and then the edge there where it needs to carry forward is here. And they speak from there, and they get stuck. And then I very often make my wonderful suggestion or proposal or whatever it is, which comes from good experience, and I know it's a real thing. And once in a while, things actually move from it. Usually their face tightens up, and I say, well, yeah, that's what I think, but what do you actually have there? And then we make room for that, and it breathes, and then these carrying forward steps come. And the beginning, at least, they're very characteristic in that they don't usually, it wouldn't make a good Hollywood film. They don't usually come, oh, this is the solution. What comes is, oh, it's a little different than what I said. I don't think I'm exactly ashamed. I think I'm like that. I don't have a word for it, but it's more like, or little transference steps come there of, well, you don't really understand or whatever. Or funny steps that you don't brag about 5 or 6 of those, and then finally something comes that you could write an article about. Oh, that's how it really is, and oh, yeah. Oh, that's, you know, and I'm happy, and the person still looks completely sunken, so I say, oh, that doesn't help enough or something, or yeah, that's right, and you know all this too. But those are carrying forward steps. And so what is a person? A person is in interaction on many levels, and a person is a carrying forward process, a life process. And that's what life is. And everything I'm saying about carrying forward applies to dogs and cats and horses and plants, and every living thing carries itself forward, and if it gets stuck, it's right there. And if you can water the damn plant within 3 months, it'll still come, you know, because because it's right there. It's ready to go. And that's what human organisms are. And my third theoretical point is what I call implicit intricacy. And some people have to have Latin terms for these things. So, right? So these are very important because nobody believes you in the theoretical world unless you have arcane terms. So please learn carrying forward and implicit intricacy and interaction first. Because those words right away don't make any sense, so people can say, what is that? But again, you know that, and there may be something I have to add a little there, but the living process, the experiencing process is, even in plants and animals, is an implicit intricacy, which is to say that anything we say or think about it, any scientific theory about it, any theory, anything we ever say is wrong if you think that that's what it is. If you think that it may be helpful to think about it this way, then the theory can be right and can help a lot. If you think that living is actually made up out of these verbal conceptual units, then you're wrong before you ever even start to say what the theory is. Are you following me? Well, you all know that too, because you've all experienced with yourself and other people that sometimes the theory is really wonderful and it helps, and then the next minute it's all wrong, and because life is not made up of theoretical units. It's not made up of any units, actually. It's a carrying forward interaction. And so it's always implicitly more intricate, implicitly more complex, implicitly more interesting. Sometimes I beg my client, let's be interested in you. You know, I know the situation is urgent. I know you've got to stop this and you have to find another way. I understand. But let's be interested in you too, at least. You know, so that we can have some joy in finding how interesting and intricate and complicated and unexpected and surprising and unpredictable this really is once it opens up. And then I don't think I would say all that to a client, but maybe I would. But I hope that we can be interested in it, because even though right now it looks exactly like type A, diagnostic, this and that, if it's going to be allowed to breathe, within 5 minutes it's going to be different. It's going to be more complicated. It's going to be, yeah, that's true, but, and it's going to have all these shades and all, and you know all that. I call that an implicit intricacy. If you theoretically assert that that's what human beings are, that's what pathology is, that's what all the dynamics are, that's what the archetypes are, that's what the behavior circuits, I don't care what you name it, underneath it's an implicit intricacy. And if you theoretically assert this, then all your practice will have a support to it. This way, most people have a theory here. Then when they go to practice, if you tape record them, there's hardly any relationship. Did you know that? Yeah, you do know that, because you surely know at least one theory, and God knows you don't. You're not this machine that does that theory, right? Once in a while, the theory will help. So my third point wants to be what life, a person, a living thing, all these words really refer to. What's really going on is an implicit intricacy. But don't forget, it's an implicit intricacy that wants to be carried forward. It's an implicit intricacy that wants to be carried forward. And it is already an interaction. And it's at least partly, and most importantly, an interaction with you if you're working with, well, either way. If you're working with yourself or if you're working with other people. You need to look at what is the interaction that's going on. How am I treating myself if you're working on something? Who is this person focusing, this spider in the middle of this spider web focusing. I say, well, wait a minute, that's not going to get me any different. Let me first go in there where it isn't just that, where I can be in touch with the murky ongoingness. And of course, if I'm working with somebody, is this the right kind of interaction? And half the time it's not, but it allows me to then move in that direction. Oh, I see, I forgot again. Or, oh, I see, this person's sitting. Oh, I see, the person is still answering what I said. Here I thought I got them back on their own track, but they're still explaining to me why I'm not right 5 minutes ago. Oh, God, we don't want that. We don't want my person spending all that time answering something that I already know wasn't helpful. So then I come back and I say, now wait, that you're still answering me. I know that wasn't right. What do you actually have there? Or I may think the interaction is important to say, you're still telling me I was wrong, and I know I was, All right. Because so often it's more important for my client to get strong than to find out whatever it is, So if they're giving me a hard time, that's joyful because they're getting strong, And, they may give me a hard time that at first I feel terrible. So I used to call this the oof-oh phenomenon. When the client first attacks you, you say, and then you slowly recover and come out and you say, oh, my client is getting stronger. I must be doing something right. And then you can respond. And the fact that you first oof, well, that's fine. That's your private. That's okay. So those are my 3 points. My 3 points are interaction first, that's what we really are on all these levels. And secondly, that we're a carrying forward process. Life wants to move forward. And you can rely there on that's why positive steps come. That's why they come. I'm explaining why they come. They come because life is like that. Life is a forward-moving, living process. So you cut yourself and you clean it, you put disinfectant on it, you put a bandage on it, but it heals. In there are all these weird little implicitly intricate capillaries, and it knows how to hook the right capillary up to the right capillary and make a new one and do all that. We don't know how to do that. It does that. We might have to hold it together so it can do that, or we might have to clean it at least, or whatever. But living things tend to stay alive. So this is opposed to an abstract principle of self-preservation or something. But no, it's not an abstract principle. It's what is actually happening. You're actually inhaling and exhaling. When the pressure on your butt gets too bad with these bad chairs, you shift a little so the blood can go. That's all happening without you even paying attention to it. So that's what life is. And that's why when we provide a certain kind of interaction, the person gets different in the interaction, but not just different. My second point is they get better. Life can move again. And we can then use this framework to put details in there. We can say, now with most, we don't know where exactly the person is stuck, but if we can provide a certain kind of interaction, it will exactly provide the carrying forward, even though we don't know what it is. Because it's a life carrying forward interaction. It's a, oh, I see you, and that's good. And oh, and then if I make words for it, they won't be right. But you know all that. Okay, now I think all I want to add to that is, that was theory.
Can I ask for
Yes.
a little bit more explicit comments about what's individual about humans? Because
isn't that interesting? And that's what I wrote down to do, and then I didn't get to it. Really. I wanted to say, and I did plan to say it because I prefaced it by saying, well, on this one I think I have a little something to add that isn't in most, at least, of the theories. And that is that the implicit intricacy is really, really different in each person. And some people have always said that, of course. Each person is a completely irreplaceable take on the universe, or whatever you want to call that whole thing. And when they're gone, that's gone. And you can get somebody better, smarter, bigger, anything. But that one you can't get back. Each person is a completely different take. And so when you make concepts, what?
Snowflake.
Yeah. Well, even snowflakes, I think every 10 billion, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the statistics is. But each person is a snowflake, absolutely, like that. And you're not going to find another one like that. And that means you are one of those. Which means that if you make well, see, now I'm in philosophy. If you make concepts from down there, you're going to tell us things that nobody else can. And nobody else will. But that starts with where things are unclear. If you just take my concepts and all the other concepts you know and rearrange them, that we have all that in the library. You would have to go to where you have some living that hasn't spoken. If you speak from there, because we're each completely different, and yet we're all interhumanly social, so that what you are living there is completely different. But if you speak from there, then we can all relate to it. And so the more autistic something is, I always say, the more private and autistic and unspeakable and having that soggy quality, that's you-ness, the further down there it is, the more meaningful it's going to be when you can speak from it. Because it'll be further away from all the jabber that we have anyway. Okay. That individuality is so interesting, because if somebody comes and sits down, you can know that that's what you have there. And they may not say anything interesting, they may say only trite things, but they're one of those, if you can get them speaking from there, right? Now that degree of individual irreplaceableness, many theories don't have. But it's not new with me. I mean, you can find it. Did I do it?
Yes,
oh,
yes, thank you.
Carried forward
we were looking forward to that in our RFOT program.
Oh, good.
Yes, you did.
Oh, good. Okay. So now we could have some comments, some questions, some... Yes.
I just want to say that throughout your entire talk, I have heard the most cosmic laughter. And I'm so...
You've heard the most...
Cosmic laughter.
Oh, yes.
I am so delighted.
That's really nice. Well, I want to tell you that you have been sending me that reaction the whole time. Because when I talk, I live off people's reactions. And
it's an interaction first.
Yes, sure.
It's not just what you say, but there's been a... Yes.
So that's very, very fun. That, yes.
When you were referring to trauma, that
yes.
bringing the trauma forward is traumatic.
Yes.
And you were saying that the relationship has to be thickened.
Yes.
Make it something other than a re-traumatization.
Yes.
What do you mean by the thickening of the relationship?
Well, of course, that's surely the right question. Well, from the inside of the client, I know the difference right away, because I have what I described in my partnership is like that. I got to a certain point in my own focusing, and now I have my partner. And so I start to say the same thing. It doesn't come out the same. If it does, something's wrong. Then I go see. And it's almost that quick with this particular partner. But let's say a more ordinary, it would be if I'm into it a ways, and then I see that, oh, I'm just talking to myself again. That feels different. Okay, now that's not answering her question. I'm just starting by saying one place I do know the difference is from the inside as a client. I know the difference. And I knew it as a client when I began. They were talking about the relationship and all this stuff, and I would in talking about your therapist, they were measuring what people were saying about, and I was much too shy to ever talk to my therapist about him. I would never have said, are you married, or how old are you, or what do you think, or I couldn't even call him by his name. I never would. So when they measured what clients said about therapists and they said that's the relationship, then I had a great idea as a graduate student. I had a great idea, which is, let's not measure, well, they measured that anyway, but instead of measuring that, let's ask, are you different here than you are in the rest of your life? Because I would walk in the door and be different. Okay, now how the hell do you know this from the therapist side is what you're really asking. Is not so simple. But I can feel when a person is losing me. I can feel when I'm here, even though I have clients who stare down all the time, sort of steadily, and yet I know I'm there. There is a kind of living, I'm telling you about it quality to it somehow. There is a way that, and that there I'm never totally sure from that side. But there is and then of course you get, when a person cries, I often want to know, have you cried about this before? Because so often they don't cry alone, they cry here. So I'm explaining the kind of thing that answers it. I don't think I know a sure way. I said I'm explaining the kind of thing that it is, the kind of differences. Sometimes I really know as a therapist, when this person comes, they're alive here with me in a way that they are not elsewhere. And sometimes I don't know. And I'm taking your question to mean when you don't know, right? And so I'm saying, well, what do I go by when I don't know? Well, there's a certain tone that I'm still there, that they're speaking to me, that they're aware that I'm hearing this. They're giving me reactions of, oh, you didn't understand this exactly, now I have to tell you again, or, oh, I forgot to tell you, or I'm present. And so I wouldn't let somebody be alone with me very long if they're repeating an old horror place. Oh, that's another, see, I wasn't conscious of that, but that's also what I do. I make sure, too. Like I leave people sit quietly when they go down there. But if I think they're reinstancing, then I say something. I say, well, what's it like there? Can you feel okay about this? Or can we welcome it? That's another big thing. If you can welcome it, then you're the person that's welcoming it, as well as what you're welcoming. Did you know that one? That's another one. You all know this one, but theoretically it's important to say. Or there's an adult and there's the child. Can we care for the child, I will often say. And I say we because I don't want to give somebody an impossible job to do. Go take care of your child. I'm saying you and I can care for the child. Now if that takes, by which I mean if the person looks at me totally puzzled and says, what the hell are you saying? Or, oh no, I hate the child or whatever, then it didn't take. But if it takes, then we're okay. So all of that is not really answering hard and fast that I know, but right? So if a person were going through a reliving, I would interrupt. Oh, that's another thing. So many of my trainees are lovely, shy, sweet, gentle people. And so every year when I was doing the practicum, I had to say, now this week, interrupt everybody, all the time. Everywhere if you have a chance, your family and your other students, anybody, until you get able to interrupt. And then we'll go see exactly where you should ideally interrupt. Because it's very important to be able to interrupt. And you might get shy and not interrupt. But you don't interrupt by saying, oh God, you're doing something bad. anything like that. You interrupt by saying, how is that for you now? Or I want to be with you, or any damn thing. Sometimes you can just cough when you don't need to, and it'll bring you back in. Thank you. That's just the right question for that.
So you were saying something about can we welcome it, and then there was something.
Yes, yes. Where you have this, for example, very often happens, there's this great tension, pressure, or something like that. And I say, well, I know this sounds funny, but can we be glad it's here? It's going to talk to us. Why don't you welcome it? And I remember the first time that happened, I had this really puzzling look on the person's face after a while, and he said, when I welcome it, it goes away. But it doesn't always go away, but it opens or it loosens or something comes from it. And yeah, exactly. And welcoming does not mean agreeing with it or accepting. Accepting it is always too passive for me. I don't use that word. It's knowing that if we give it room, it'll breathe and then it'll carry forward. You don't have to accept something you don't like. But you may use the word better than I do. No, I'm not against the word. Just, it's not a passive resignation. It's a welcoming, oh, this is where the trouble is, and so here it can talk to me.
I'd like to say something here about when we come from this understanding of one interaction and two people,
Yes.
then it helps us to know that we're a team, that there's a team here. So if the patient can't welcome something, the patient doesn't have to, because I can welcome it. And often I don't use that word, because then that puts the patient off if they're hating something.
Which
and I
word?
say, welcome.
Oh yeah,
The welcome word.
Right.
But I might say, oh, really want to hear about that.
Yes.
Or I'm glad that's coming up right now. Or something that is showing that that there's somebody on this team that can receive it.
Right, and I want to hear about it, you said.
Yeah.
That's really important. I want to, but then of course you adjust, and you know this too, but I'll say it anyway. You adjust everything right after you say it. It's, the psychoanalytic rule was, when in doubt, keep your mouth shut. Well, my rule is, when in doubt, say it, and then fix it.
Right.
Because you're probably saying something wrong, but in listening to the client trying to tell you where it was wrong, the whole thing moves forward.
Mm-hmm.
So she says, I want to hear from that. 9 times out of 10, I think that's great. Oh, you. Oh, somebody's here wants to. Oh, well, if you want, without words, it just comes. Oh, you want to hear about that. But the 10th time, somebody's going to say, oh,
I have to talk about this.
Don't control me, or something.
Right.
And you see it on the face. You don't know what it is, but it's something like, and then of course you can fix that right away. You can say, well, that doesn't mean you have to tell me, or whatever, right? And then that can be wrong too. Then I say, well, what is wrong there? And then the person often says to me, well, I don't want you to go away either, I don't want you to push on me, but I don't want you to go away either. Oh, yeah, I get it. You don't want me to,
Well, I'm hearing inside of what you're saying that I have to be able to, let's say I'm in the client's position, I have to be able to believe you're welcome, which in part is the fact that I may or may not be able to believe it.
You, the client, may have to believe it?
Client, but also, sometimes I hear those words, like when welcoming puts me off, because I don't believe the person who's saying it to me really is welcoming it. They're saying something formulaic.
Yes.
And so it sounds to me like I need, as a therapist, I would need to come out of my own complexity.
Yes.
Accept the other's complexity.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Sort of my own complexity is sitting there, and every once in a while it shoots up some message. But it's open. But what I'm paying attention to is the client's complexity. Clearly, just as you're saying. And so no formula works with everybody. And then it's sort of interesting again and fascinating how something that's always right turns out to be wrong here now. Or like focusing instructions, I love the person who said to me, I don't like it when you tell me what to do inside myself. right? That's where I learned both of these steps, because that totally knocks out focusing invitations, right? It's sort of like totally. And I said, oh, yeah, I see. All right. I said, I won't do it at least for a while. And then she said, but don't take your, I don't know how she said it, but the message was, don't go away, you know. You just went away. I didn't want you to go away. So then I had this subtle thing. Yeah, right. So we're paying attention to there, but yet through here or something. Right? Like if somebody heard one statement from your client or read it in the transcript and said, what did she mean when she said this sentence? I would hope that you wouldn't be ready to say what she meant, because it would be all embedded in this oh, sure, I understand, or don't, or why this or that. So it would take you a few minutes to dig out of there and tell the person what this sentence means, because you hear it into your what you're bringing, right? Which is what you've understood up to now. Okay, now you were trying to help me make the point that theory can help by saying, oh yeah, you were saying the interaction, there's only one interaction, which means that I trust the interaction. I don't mind if the client does not perceive. Oh, somebody did say that here, right? Do you say it? The client has to perceive your... I don't think so.
Yes.
I said it about Rogers, but you sounded like you said it, but you didn't mean that.
I have to believe you.
Oh, believe you. No, you don't have to believe me. I have to make sure that I am actually welcoming your disbelief. See? That this moment doesn't turn backwards. That, as you said very well, that I'm demanding from you something that you haven't got. That's not a good interaction. We all had those. We don't like those. Oh, I see. Yeah, well, that makes sense to me. Why should you believe it? You know, you've got a lot of experience. But I'm perfectly clear that I'm welcoming him. That's what counts. That's the interaction, right? And so he tells me I'm an idiot. Well, isn't that interesting? Yeah, I see where you got that. I see. I sounded like an idiot to you when I said, well, I don't think I was, but yeah, I see. I need to be welcoming. Then it'll take care of itself that he doesn't believe it. And of course, it's a little tricky to welcome the negative, but that's what we all need to do. One interaction, I'm saying, comes in other... Yeah, more questions coming. Tell me something. Tell me something that... Yes.
Life wants to carry forward.
Yes.
Where we're stuck is where that happens.
We say again?
Where we're stuck is where that happens.
Yes.
Does that ever evidence as a wish to self-destruct? I mean, is that a quality of stuckness that then occurs? Or does carrying forward itself ever, I mean, as cellularly?
Oh,
happens,
yeah. Oh, sure. Everything that we call bad has its life forwarding desire twisted around. It's sort of like a little later it'll be, oh, that's well, what shall I say? I must know 20 different things that a desire to kill myself might be. And then when I have this person, it's going to be the 21st. It's going to be something else. So going back, I'm saying, oh, there was the person who, when they focused way far down, said, the thing that wants to die is really saying, will you love me?
Well, your biological analogies, where we know we have cells that are programmed to self-destruct, for instance, as part of the carrying forward of the life.
No, that's a biological theory. I know a guy who studied cancer cells, and he says they're incomplete cells. And they want to complete themselves. And so then I checked this with this is a very close friend of mine, so I checked it with a hotshot guy who's developing something at Sharon Plow, And he said, yes, he said, and we even have something to help them complete, but it only works 73% of the time, and killing those cells works 91% of the time. So the company is not investing in it. And that's the way it is with all these things. You hear about something totally negative, and then if somebody can go in there, that's why I always wish concentration camp guards would come in therapy with me, but they never do. To find out what that is.
This thing that wanting to go forward seems like an ongoing.
It's often
going
twisted.
Out of cycle, you know, in other words,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to have
No,
any-
that's better.
anything
No,
close
no,
up.
no. There's no question about what you're right, and I'm trying to talk after that. There's no question that what it gets twisted, and not just self-destruct, but evil stuff gets. It's a twist of life energy. So to say, oh, it's all the lovely life energy wanting to move forward, I'm so glad you bring that up now that I realize that. Because a lot of people feel that way. As long as they're not being attacked on the street, they feel like, oh, sympathize with the poor person that's attacking you on the street. Well, I do. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't call a halt to that crap when it's happening. You see what I mean? Life is trying to move forward that way too. But I'm not at all in favor of saying, oh, she has a right to commit suicide. I'm not. And I'm not in favor of sympathizing with the sadist until they get to the point where one person I worked with said, oh, what did she call him, Mr.? I forget what she called him. There's this huge Mr. somebody who was her sadism circuit. Oh, she said, there's a baby crying at the bottom of him. Well, now you can sympathize freely. But up until that point, yes, welcome the feeling, tell me about it, but don't do it, right? So the twists do happen. But what I'm arguing against is to take the twist and make it an entity. The cells want to destruct. No, I don't think they do. But they're destructive, all right.
It's like an ongoing
They're destructive,
growth
all right.
process. You don't see growth in your view, in your overall image. Does not include a death moment.
Right, right. And if you trace Freud through, you'll find that he was just wrong about what he himself was doing there. Because he was equating life with death. And what he really meant is that life is moving forward to a resolution. But the only resolution that he had in his theoretical structure was homeostasis. And then you can trace that back to 1911 when he first wrote about the two principles, the pleasure principle and the reality principle. And he had at the very center of his theory homeostasis, which is tension release, back to balance. And he has a long footnote in there because he has a creature that has no relations, no interaction. It's just a creature and it's just the pleasure principle. It just wants what it wants. And then it hits reality, and for crying out loud, now it has to develop all this complicated structure. And then he has a long footnote which says, people have complained that it isn't possible in nature to have a creature like that. And he says that doesn't matter. And to me, being a philosopher and being interested in theory construction, that's where he went wrong. He put a conceptual little machine in the center. Had he put anything living in the center, even one moment fight with his wife or his own sadistic or whatever, anything living in the center will get you a theory that's approximately not all wrong. But if you put a concept in the center, by which I mean a theoretical gizmo, that's where it goes wrong. And then in whenever it was, 29 or around in there, after the First World War, when he wrote Beyond the Pleasure Principle, he traced it out. But he didn't let go of it. But you read that whole thing and there's no death instinct to the last page. And there he says, well, so after all we have to say that life heads for resolution and resolution. Actually, it's all about carrying forward. All of Freud. It's wish fulfillment. Every dream is wish fulfillment. Only don't interpret that as the particular wish of the child in the past at that moment. It's the wish of the whole organism to live. Every dream is, according to him. Everything is wish fulfillment, including this death instinct, right? So all you have to do is substitute any living moment for homeostasis, and you can get a Freud that... Okay, but back to, I'm denying, and who knows, every theory is partly wrong, I'm denying that there are destructive entities in the life process. And yet I know very well how split people can be and how split I can be and have been. And so I'm not making a pretty sunshine statement. I'm saying the underneath nature of it is life moving forward. That's why therapy works. Otherwise it wouldn't work. You would make your client different, but not better. Yes?
Is this like a premise at the basis of your system that life...
No, it's my system at the basis of the premise. No, go ahead.
Yeah, well, could you say what the difference is? Like, how is it not a premise, and what is it instead?
Nice question.
It's a lovely question, yes. Okay, so we go to philosophy.
Did you say the question?
Yeah, the question was, is that a premise? And of course it is. I mean, he's perfectly right. Is that a premise? The premise meaning something you believe that leads to a lot of other things, but it by itself, you can't ground it anywhere. It's where you start, sort of, right? Did I do okay? That would be a premise. And he's, of course, totally right that that thing for me is a premise. But where do I get it? Well, it's still a premise because it doesn't hang from something else. But where do I get it? Well, I get it from living. I get it from experience. I get it from you. I get it from what it is to sit down with somebody. I get it all the time. I get it from every tree and every child and every dog. It's always there. Now, what exceptions it might have, I was granting her right away that, look, this is only a theory. In that sense, you could treat it as a premise by saying Gendlin makes the premise that there's nothing else that vitiates that or undercuts that or destroys that. But that is you and me or something. And that's where I, anyway, as a philosopher would like to point. Concepts are things we make from living. When I criticized Freud, that's what I meant. He should have stuck a piece of living in the center. That's, any moment of living is endlessly rich. You just take this moment where you're sitting on your chair, whatever way, and hearing this. If you take this moment, you can make it the center of a theory about everything, and you can keep coming back into it, and it will have more and more and more, because it's this implicit intricacy of living. And that thing I know is there. The retaliation, you maybe you don't need the retaliation.
Right, and I may not know yet what that would look like.
Yeah.
Definitely don't want to be there.
Yeah. There is a space for it.
Right.
There's a function, like you know what it would be like, but whether it will actually come and what it would look like, you don't know yet.
Right,
But
maybe it's the direction.
you might, yeah, right. Just have the direction. And,
Right, and I can come back to this.
yeah. So that's a good, thank you. That's a good way to make a stop, since we have to. Good, yeah. Swell. Thank you for coming, for stepping forward. Good.
Help you. There we go.
Thank
You're released.
Just sit here for now.
Yeah, you can.
Sure. And Lynn, will you close the window? It's still open.
You know, I think that it might be open from the top. Are you?
I don't know, but
because
I'll put my
it's
jacket.
closed, but it's.
It was too warm, and I took my jacket off. And then, the next thing I knew,
There's a draft, and I'm not
There's
sure
a-
where that draft is coming from.
but it wasn't there for a while, so something got open that was not open. Something changed. Somebody quite rightly decided it needed some fresh air. Someone secret, really. Yes, exactly. It carried forward. It wasn't carried forward. So it would be good to maybe stand up and stretch for a second or something. I like to have something different. And there's not space to make a break or something. But if we're going to talk about... No, I'm not going anywhere. Oh, I'm hiding this thing. There it is.
Yeah, actually, can I just reposition
Sure,
it?
put it
Sorry.
back.
Thank you, because otherwise it gets muffled.
I'm not sure.
We just in between the
I don't know where that draft is coming
To me, I'm okay now. I put my jacket on. I need some kind of distinction between working in a person's soul and discussing practice or something. So,
So, for those people that have to leave right on time, you might want to go toward toward the back. And if it's okay with you, Jean, we'll go a little bit over 6.
sure.
Because.
But if you have to leave, ask your question now, or
Right.
make your statement now, or object to what went on now.
Right.
All are welcome.
I think I did something wrong here. But
Are you okay with
gonna-
this?
I'm okay, yeah. I wanted to be on the camera though. Maybe on the webcam.
Yeah. And then please leave her. Yeah, that's good.
So we're going to be talking about those theoretical points in relation to this experience that we all had together. What and other points that you might want to bring up that are theoretical.
Or, yes, right. Or anything. Well, actually, for a few minutes, let's talk about what we just did.
Yes.
And then we can talk about this other topic that we don't have time for, that was, well, what else would you like a theory to explain? Which you must have, some of you brought something that was actually announced, right?
Yes.
But
And there's a good seat that's vacant now. If anybody is uncomfortable and wants a good seat, you can take this one. I think Joan is going to take a good seat. She's been.
and we can always do that after 6 o'clock, especially if you brought something. So first, I would just like anything that you saw that I did that was strange, or that you wouldn't have done, or would have done better,
Or they illustrated one of those.
or that illustrated Lynn's. Yes.
Oh, well, you definitely were, when you said, she wants another solution, and you said, oh, there is something, but it's not there yet.
Yes.
That definitely illustrated the carrying forward, I see it.
Yes.
It's there, but it isn't there yet, which is
Yes.
different than a lot of the way a lot of people would operate it. It really puts out your faith that this is there.
Yes.
We just don't have it yet.
Yeah.
Directly
Right.
illustrated that.
Right. And I didn't want to spoil the whole hour with it, but I wanted there to be a space in which something could come. Yeah, like you said, I mean, I knew that, well, I wasn't going to come up with it, but I know 12 things that would fit there, and so does everybody else, and so does she. So, right? So I always think it's silly to say the obvious, which she's already thought of 5 years ago, but for something to be able to come. And then it seemed to me a little after that that we almost got stuck there. Something was supposed to come. So then I went back to where she was before I took her there. I felt like I did a little too much, and so then I made up for it. Did you see me do that?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
That seemed like a good illustration illustration
Yes.
of the idea of something implicitly leaning into the future. That this new way isn't there yet, but it's implicitly there.
Oh yeah.
Then there was a point at which you said, and maybe after that, when she sort of got stuck there, and you said, well, I actually think that you're there. Or something that
Yes.
you have, that
Yes.
where you are with seeing this and this,
Yes.
that is a place.
Yes.
And then you sort of say, yeah, but maybe I'm reading into it.
Yes.
That was said.
Yes. 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 Exactly like that. And that's pretty much me. Rather than suppressing it, I'll say it. You know, like it was clear that that wasn't exactly how she had it, and yet it was so close to how she had it that I had to say, well, it seems to me just saying strongly, I don't want this, but I don't want to go there, is something. And then having said it, then I wanted to fix it. Because it was clear that in that moment, at least for her, it wasn't something. So there's, oh, I see, it's just me saying that. That way it goes in there for what it's worth, and it doesn't spoil the whole hour. So if my therapist thinks I should do this or something, or explain why it doesn't work at great length. So many tapes that I heard as a training person were like that. The client comes in and says something, and the therapist misunderstands it, and the rest of the hour is the client explaining to the therapist why that isn't right. But it is sort of right. Well, if you look at it this way, it could be what you said, but it really isn't. Because, and you know, 20 minutes into it, I say to the therapist, who brought that up? You know? And he says, well, I don't know. So I didn't want that. I very quickly, I say, well, that's just me saying it. And then we can go on from there. It was exactly as you say, I didn't want to suppress. I wanted to say it for whatever it was worth, and yet not get in the way. Something else, yes?
No, it's just that as she was looking for some way as you were looking for some way of maybe finding a solution, there was a lot of resolution going on. Well, I'm not really a victim. You know, that was building up.
Which was more important.
Yeah, but she was really able to sort out what was really
Yeah.
how she really
Yeah.
was seeing
Yeah.
herself.
But what do you mean more? Why are you saying that? Yes, it's clear. But you're making a point.
Me?
Yeah, you.
No, I'm just saying that there's a lot that goes into finding
Yes.
a middle ground, which is what
Oh, I see. No, I saw it the other way. That finding a middle ground is the solution to, you know, this situation.
right.
But she went deeper than just this situation.
She did. That's what
And that's what you're pointing to. That's why I was thinking. Right, right. And so that's also why I didn't want us stuck entirely in finding an alternative, because this is more. I agree. That's how I felt when it happened. I felt like, oh, this is more. Yes.
I like that.
I noticed that the tone of your voice throughout was lower and softer than it is when you're just speaking to us.
Oh, yeah.
Then
Not conscious. But when you say it, well, sure. Sometimes I become aware that when I'm trying to weigh down, then I become aware that I'm speaking almost very, very especially like, well, what is that act? But I wasn't conscious of that here. It just,
it felt to me like very much of an invitation.
yeah.
Do you feel it that way?
Yes. Yes. As an invitation, yes. I feel exactly as right. Both ways. An invitation come this way, and also an invitation to whatever's under it to come. Yes. Yes, yes. Say something negative.
I had a sense that, you know, at one point you were trying to help her see if there was a place where she could move to something new, and sensing that that was going to a place that she wasn't quite at.
Yes.
So you backtracked.
Yes.
And I don't remember exactly what it was, but you said something else. So that's where the forward movement, that's where the thing is. That's.
Yes,
and
I
I felt-
did.
I don't remember
Yes, I
exactly what
did.
the word was, but it seemed important. It seemed like this was kind of
Yes.
like you were getting it. You were
Yes,
thinking, okay,
yes,
now, so
yes,
where I was
yes,
what
yes.
I thought it was, but it's not there. I see it's here.
Yes, and very spontaneously it came. I noticed it also.
Right.
As if I'm deciding where it really is, which I don't want to do at all. And yet
I
it
don't think it was that.
no, I don't think you took, well, leave her in peace unless she wants to say something. My rules of demonstrating, leave her in peace.
Yes.
If she wants to, you have first priority if you feel like saying something. But we're
I'd be glad
guessing,
to know what you-
we're both guessing that she didn't hear it that way. That was a spontaneous, oh, now I understand. And it's perfectly all right that maybe you still don't.
It seemed that it was right at that.
Well, it doesn't matter really.
No, I just meant by her response. It
Oh,
seemed to
yeah.
help her
Yeah.
more than where you were before.
Yeah, and very often these things help in the sense that what's really true comes. So it could have helped. I say, oh, that's what, it could have helped if she had said, no, it's this.
Right. And
It would still help.
No, that still isn't.
Yeah. But as long as that's what the invitation, as long as it's clear to the client that you want to hear how it really is, and you don't give a damn whether what you said is right or wrong, you want it to hear really, then it becomes easy. It takes a little while to communicate that I don't care about what I just said. I want to hear how is it actually done. But that's right, I noticed too. I say, oh, there, that's, yeah. Go ahead.
Obviously, you're being so there and patient. Listening is so important in the interaction. I think I noticed, I mean, I don't have it exactly written down, but that certain things that she said that were quote unquote negative, even though it was like with a lot of feeling, like you definitely were very silent, whereas with other things that had more of a growing edge or whatever, you would come in there and say something. So I'm wondering why, because since you are so important in the interaction, wouldn't it be equally important to
I think so.
be there with the very negative and see what comes from that?
Yes, I think so.
Oh.
In other words, I wouldn't like it if it were systematically true that I get very silent if somebody wants to say they're angry or they're hurt and nothing more. It's certainly true that if there's an edge of movement, then I go there.
Uh-huh.
That's true.
Okay.
I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose that edge.
Right. Okay.
Because everything is always too simple. Oh, I'm hurt, or I'm angry, or I'm depressed, or I'm this, or I'm that. And so if there's any tail or head to it, then I want to go there. So that part of what you said, what you observed, I like. But I wouldn't like it if it were true that I'm not there as much for what hurts or what's negative. I wouldn't like that. And if it were there, well, it was not meant to be like that.
Can you say a little bit more or show when you say follow the edge, just a little bit of where you saw it or kind of make it?
Well, this thing happens and it's bad. So I didn't know what, and I don't need to know what, but something happens and it's bad, and you're hurt, and it's bad because then it negates the next week's celebration and makes this conflict and all that. And then you said, oh, it makes me lose my own loving. To me, that was a step of the kind that I meant, right? And it wasn't like it was a solution or anything. It was maybe worse than, but it was a turn there. So then I would rather be with that than, or the word hurt, which is just as good for both. or whatever. Did I answer it? Maybe not.
Yeah, I guess the following, but
And then it goes like that. That's what she means. I keep picking up it goes like that.
movement is.
Yeah. So then you stayed with that for a while, and then you said I lose my loving, and I come to this place where I'm very reactive and accusatory or whatever, retaliatory. And then I said, oh, it's not only that you lose it, it's also you don't like where it goes. I don't know, somehow to me that's the movement of it then, right? And then you did actually move that way, which I don't need it to be right what I'm saying. I needed to bring the next thing or something. But it was actually, you said, well, I'm actually not this way mostly. So how come it's like, and you were standing already in a further place? Did I answer it? That's what I mean.
I think that she said, I think that you said, I lose my love, and then you said, Jean, you lose your own love, and there was just something of emphasis in there that helped to carry it forward.
Was that?
You picked up on, oh, it's my own love. It was as if you were again feeling into the implicit.
But is that right? I really only intended to say back what she had said, but it's true. Yeah, it's true then. Yeah.
My sense was that it was you were my love.
Yeah.
But I think hearing it and that.
She said she spoke of feeling betrayed. And that wasn't the term.
That wasn't what?
That wasn't the term that you reflected back to.
That's right. And did she really use that word? I don't think so. Because there now I can take up for myself a little. If people say certain kinds of charged words, I will always say them back.
You would have said that back. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just.
But I did hear this. I did hear that flavor, and I did say, "Oh, it flips so suddenly," or "How can it be this when it's that?" I tried to say that thing, but if there had been what, yeah.
But it's like a sense of being wronged and wrong.
Yes, and we did say, we did say that back. Oh, I remember trying to find a word, like being attacked or being punished wrongly or some unfair. But if she did say that word, then I would have liked to have said it back. You know how it is. Okay. It's after 6 o'clock. Yeah, go ahead.
That Sue's comment about it being on different levels more, I thought we could point out that with the assumption that the person is not the content, the person is much more than the content, then therapy proceeds on a different level. The content is important because it's an expression of the person, but you are not just interested in the content, you're interested in the movement and the content. And that seemed true at every point.
Yeah, that's what we should say. It's really not just a movement, it's actually the person. It's like, wait, no, I have this sort of big thing. It's like you sat here, you were actually here. You know? And I saw you, you were there, and that's somehow very large compared to the little bitsy things that were said, which were in themselves important, of course. There's something about that.
Well, I just kept hearing what you said before, that whatever happens, she is not leaving the room alone with it anymore.
Yes,
That's for sure.
yes. Well, that's true too. But there's something there that I would like to be saying at the end. There's somebody there looking at me. That's a big deal. Every different person that walks in is like that. And then most of them won't ever talk to me, but if somebody's actually there, that's the larger frame of it all or something. So I put everything else away so that I can be there for that. And it's not so much the courage, because I've got it all here. If I need to defend myself, I can get in there and I can do all the. But for the moment, there's somebody came or something. And yeah, okay. But you all know that, right? Well, I'm saying that's more important than whatever we do. Okay. Yes. Well, be reminded. Anybody can remind you. All right. So we're having a break, and then you want to still go on, or what do you want to?
No,
It's time to stop.
It's
Okay.
6:10.
Okay.
But why don't we just give anybody a chance to make any closing remarks, and then we're going to end. And
Okay. So you can start by saying one thing that never came up was, if you go home now, what do you mumble to yourself? That's what I think would be good for closing remarks.
Or you could say, the best thing that came up was.
Yeah. Well, we've had such good responses that I'm looking for, but none of this takes care of.
The one thing that never came up is the therapist's anxiety. That a person is going to leave still up in the air.
Yeah, right. I don't know what to do with that exactly, except I sometimes laugh because I look at my watch sometimes to see if we still have time to save the situation, and I'm aware that I look like I'm trying to get out of here, but but yes, yes.
Both wanting something to come with. And focusing has helped so much for me in those moments.
Yes.
Now, that I didn't have before, so I'm stopping myself from trying to come up with the solutions that I'm going there.
Yes, let's have a space for the solution.
That in this somewhere
Right.
here, something's gonna come.
Yes,
But why
yes,
can't
that's
them-
right.
I understand this. I don't know if I can say this simply, so stop me if I get lost in myself. But the relational part of this, not the focusing proper, seems to me it would allow for exactly that to be said. I'm sitting and I'm hearing how much you wish for this to shift, and I'm noticing myself wishing that I could make it happen with you right now. And wouldn't that also
Well, it's a little too much, but yes.
be
But I
part of
felt
it?
like it was, that is what I do, only I don't think, somehow, that's too much for me.
Which part of it would be too much for you?
Oh, well, now she has to deal with the fact that this poor man is wanting to have something happen and it didn't, and I don't want that. But I do want to honor the fact that we didn't get a solution, and had she not created that lovely ending, I would have tried to do something like that. I would have said, well, you know, there is a space for it to come. Maybe actually she did it herself, that thing. But to avow that we don't have it and it's okay. And then the other thing I would need is that it's really just as or more important where she touched herself, because we're all much too much galvanized on solving the situation and the problems, and I want us to be interested in this person who got for the moment, oh, I'm not really like that. Where does this come from? No, it doesn't. I don't recognize where it came. And she was in herself, and not just how do I handle next week, you know. So both of those things I want, and that I care about it, yes, but that I would make a whole relational scene, I wouldn't want to. That's me.
Yes, I hear that.
You might feel that that was just the opportunity to work
Yes,
something.
I feel that not from a needing to be taken care of breastfeeding therapist.
No, I understood that. And I will do that when I feel that that problem is at least as or more important than what we're talking about. And that happens.
That is the thing that
That happens.
Yeah, this issue interests me a great deal, and of course that's very difficult to do when you don't know the person.
No, for me it's very clear.
Okay.
It's very clear. Now it doesn't mean that I'm right, that I know I'm right, but it's very clear to me when I feel like there's something unresolved between us and we're pretending it's okay and we know damn well it's not. And even if it's slight, you know, like, oh, you know, with some detail about appointments or the check or anything like this, but certainly when it's central, like, you know, then I feel like, no, you can't go now because you and I are having a fight and we're not saying so yet, or you telling me now that you don't, you sent me an important message here that you don't trust me anymore and I did this thing wrong and we haven't handled that. And yeah, okay, we can stop now, but we have to say we haven't handled this or whatever.
And that's a relational piece.
Yeah, and it seems more important to me than the content. More important, more urgent, more immediate, more like we can't do anything with the content anyway if we're skewed like that. I had one like that just yesterday.
The piece for me would be when there's something implicitly there that isn't being spoken.
In
your shoes, Jean, and
Right.
my shoes as the moderator,
Yeah.
I was very aware of the time and the feeling of
Oh, yeah.
time pressure.
And I
I
know,
might have said something.
I know it as
Here
a,
we are with this time pressure.
yeah, right,
And we wish we had more time for
right.
this to unfold.
Yes, yes. Well, I have it also as the partner in the partnership thing, where in the client role, I have it that I get furious at some little thing. And I'm smart, so I don't just dump this all on my partner. I go see why, because it's so fascinating. But I often wish my partner were stronger on that dimension, that she would actually have some zest in it, you know. Let's go find out why you're furious at me, because I know I'm okay. I can't quite get that. So if I dump the whole feeling, then I'm, you know, but I get I want to, do you see what I'm saying? I'm saying as a client, I know the times when I've got to have the relational thing first. From the therapist, and if the therapist isn't up to it, well, that's okay, I'll take care of it myself. But I've got to have the room to do that.
That might be the difference between partnership and therapy.
Yes.
Because you're a
Well,
partner, you're not.
it shouldn't be the difference. We should, as partners, we should recognize also that if your partner dumps on you with some great emotion for something that you didn't do anything major, you just, you know, said something, that you would say back, oh, you're furious, that's important, or something or other, rather than, oh, what, I didn't say anything, or oh, you know.
We'd like that.
But there's a difference, because the therapist is expected to be able to do this, and the partner we don't train. But I'm just trying to answer Joan's point here, that for me, to make the relational take up all the space, it needs to feel like right this moment it's a vehicle for us. It's more important. The therapy has just gone relational, and if I don't go there, I'm pretending. And yet I can see a person saying, no, therapy is always relational. Why don't we always go there? I don't want to. But then Lynn you have it always relational, and you don't do that.
Well, it's always relational, but maybe not always explicitly.
For me, it's always relational too. What I'm saying is I make the content be the relationship if the relational needs it. I say, oh wait, now we have it between us, so we can really work on it. Sometimes I will say, oh, you're feeling that same way you just told me about now about me, right? That's great, we have it here, let's work on it. And the client will say, well, how do we work on it? And I'll say, I don't know, but we have it here. Yes.
I could describe perhaps the difference between your take and Joan's take. For Joan, the time factor of subjective felt sense of centrality. For you, you're saying there are so many things going on, and that one doesn't seem like
It wouldn't in that case.
you might have been feeling it, but it wouldn't
Right.
have been the most.
For me, it's enough that I'm interested and I recognize that we didn't find a solution, but we did make a space, that I wouldn't turn that into you, me.
But then, how would you respond to Joan, who's sort of saying that from her point of view, as she's putting herself into that situation, not that it's right or wrong, but she would want to say, you said for you it's too much.
Yeah.
What would it be that she was proposing to do, and how would that work? How could you articulate it, how you could see?
Is that addressed to Joan, or what? Do you mean for Joan to say now, or for me to say what? Yeah, then I didn't get the question.
When Joan demonstrated what she might have said,
Yes.
you said, well, for me, that's too much.
Yeah, and you want to know more?
I'm requesting.
What too much means?
I'm requesting, how could you see Joan as a separate different person, having that work? How would you language Joan's type of response working?
Well, I think that if nothing were happening, for instance, this is my sense of, there's a step in between. For me, if I get the kind of situation where it goes around in circles and it doesn't ever get anywhere, and I've been a bunch of hours already and I feel like I'm ineffective and the person's going around in circles, and I get to something like that, I will do exactly what Joan outlined. I would say, oh, here's an opportunity. Maybe the therapy can move on the relational level because it's not moving over here with focusing and blah, blah, and all that. So that's another time when I appreciate knowing that you can actually have a therapy that's essentially relational. And then I do what you said. I have all these different ones, so I don't want to do just one. But I'm sure glad that that's one place I can look when nothing's moving or...
I wanted to say there was a place where, not that it necessarily should have gone, but I think it could have been very nice work when I was very touched by you listening. And I think that if
Yes.
that was gone that way, it would have been a very powerful, important movement.
Yes.
The whole relational, when I noticed
Yes.
listening and looking in the studio
Yes.
and all that.
Yes.
And that could have been
Yes, that's right.
a place where I felt relational work would have been.
Right. There's also like that. There was this moment when she said, oh, you're listening to me and I'm feeling a lot of that.
It became explicit.
Huh?
Yeah.
It became explicit, that's the relation.
Yes. Yes.
I was
And
thinking that sort of what you said really sort of articulates the difference
Yes.
in emphasis between Eugene and I. That I hear those relational pieces very loudly, and they're sort of on my radar screen. And
Yes.
you hear them when they are loud.
well, I heard that and I wanted to be there for it. And I didn't want to make a thing out of it because I had no connection to any other thing. Now, had I thought that, had she said first that her husband or whoever she was talking about never can understand her or she doesn't feel seen or any of those things, then I would have said, oh, this is a moment when you actually can feel seen or can, I would have, but since we didn't have that, all I want to do is actually be there, not have her rush past it. And so I did say some stuff, just enough so that we didn't have to say, well, that's done now, and go, that we could be there. And that illustrates the answer to that question you're saying again. It's like I wanted to turn relational if we need it, or if it's going to help us. What?
Probably if I needed to, I would have stayed with that.
There would have been some hint for me, yeah.
Rather than that, because I think
There would have been some hint for me, yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah,
that. Although at other
Yeah.
times I've been in a lot of these types
yeah,
of work where
Yeah.
that was the work.
yeah. And also when she first sat down, it was also for me to say, oh, it was a step for you to come or something. And you feel a little pleased with yourself, yeah.
Ruth has been trying to
Say,
say
say.
for a long time.
Thank you. I was just really struck by something that you said, which I hadn't heard before, which was when you said something about her being interested in herself,
Yes.
and that mattered when you saw that she was beginning to express some interest.
Well, I meant only to say that I would like that to happen, and also that I'm interested. So I felt like that was a deeper level than how do I handle this so I don't handle it this way.
Yes, and so suddenly it felt to me like, oh, that in and of itself is a movement forward.
I thought,
And that,
yeah.
yes, well, I'm even wondering if it's a larger, like, is that something as a cue, almost, when people are expressing another level of interest in something? Is that sort of a cue of, oh, something is emerging? Or
I feel that way.
therapeutic, quote,
Yeah.
step,
I feel it.
and that your interest is in some way part of then the client's increased interest.
Well, this is probably always true, but without getting into my interest, her interest, I just feel that, well, I'll say it the other way. I have lived too much in terms of handling situations. And I had a big fight with my own dreams because I thought I discovered that my dreams are only interested in my own development. They don't help me with the situation, and I'm angry about that on some funny corner. This is the opposite point I'm trying to make. It's like, look, this is an urgent situation, and I want... So with another person, I'm neutral on that. It's like I want to recognize that it's urgent, right? And yet I'm also understanding that this broader thing or deeper thing or whatever is valuable. And I...
Looking at themselves as a person.
Yes.
Those that somehow, even though they are in therapy and
Yeah.
people that
Do
are
commit
very
suicide.
empathic and
Yes.
very there,
Yes.
still commit suicide.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
brings all the questions, so what happens?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought that up because there are people sitting right in this room who've had that experience as therapists, and I want to say I know now that there is no such thing as if I had been the way I should have been, the person wouldn't have done that. That is not true. We don't know. And so often, don't you know the other thing where you can behave perfectly as a therapist, and your client is stuck and goes home all upset and comes the next week and says, well, I was talking to my sister and she said this and so, and that opened everything up for me. No? We have to live with that. That's okay. So the same thing is true with this. There's somehow to be human. To be human is to live at this edge where, you know, you cross Houston and you get run over and this was the day you're goodbye. To be human is this weird place where if you go a little, you know, we stay where we know what we know. But if you take a couple of steps further down there, it gets windy down there. And that's where the infinity or whatever the fuck you want to call it is. And I like some word that doesn't have reverence. But, you know, that's where we live, on the edge there with whatever. And in the end, we can't figure it out to say, you know, I often think, well, any sensible person would have done this, and then everything would have been all right. And I believe that when I look at it. But somehow I'm living at this edge where he didn't know to do the sensible thing. And I don't know why he didn't. And he didn't know to change it. And he didn't know to get somebody to... I don't know. So ultimately, this business about some people committing suicide, I think it's there. It's like we don't know why enough help didn't come. Does that do anything?
I'm thinking that maybe...
I'm still stuck with, so where is what happens to that natural organismic forward movement?
Oh, it's still there. Oh, I see. Oh, theoretically, I can answer it fine. Oh, no, theoretically. Okay, so there are two guys in the hospital, and one of them, they both have voices that tell them to kill themselves all the time. And finally, one guy hangs himself by his belt. And the next day, the other guy is telling the therapist, you know, he appeared to me in my dream, and he told me, don't pay any attention to them, they're wrong. That's quite a story. I don't know what it means. I mean, it's his dream, right? So it's his projection of what this guy would say to him, perhaps, or something. Or maybe it's the guy saying, now I know they were wrong. I don't care. I just know that the positive thing is always there, but it doesn't always win.
Mm.
It doesn't always undo, but it's always there. So then I say, well, I know you can be healed. I don't know you will be, but I know you can be. I know it's possible. There's a medical evidence that it isn't. Well, yeah, but I know 10 people already who had that, and they're walking around fine 20 years later. The medical evidence doesn't say it can't be. But then I don't know if it will be. So theoretically, how do I express this? I'm saying there's, according to me, always an implicit life forwardness in this thing, in this death wish. Even the most simple is, you know, that I can't stand how I feel. How am I going to get out of this box that I'm in, which is my body? I can't stand how I feel, you know. And there are people for whom morphine doesn't work and therapy doesn't work, whichever kind of feel they mean. And so even just to get out of that, I can understand. You know, so when somebody says, well, at least I have that as a reserve, you know. I can always check out. I understand that. Yes? So to me, that isn't a negative statement, except about how bad it is. So am I making sense now?
Yeah. And
then they still don't know a lot. So, you know, when I get to the other side, maybe I'll come in your dream and say...
That theory about forward movement at the base makes doing therapy a lot easier, because then when you perceive things as self-destructive, instead of being despairing or angry or frustrated or frightened, you can get interested in, well, what would be the forward movement of such a thing that seems so destructive? And just that interest in it changes the interaction and changes the feel, even before you say anything about it.
I see that Lynn is a lot better than I am at saying where the theory matters. It's really good.
I need it.
And now going in, I see, oh, of course, you're right. You're 5 times right. Another thing you have to consider in this theoretical question here is that I was trained to begin with in listening, in client-centered listening. And for a long time, I don't think I've obeyed it, but I was at least instructed all during my training to not do anything else but listen. So when you hear terrible things, you say them back evenly as something that you want to hear more about, perhaps a little bit, but nothing added to it at all. and they all open. So it's like there's a lot of that kind of experience. And even if I can't, you can never say theoretically they all will or anything like that. The habit of saying, this sounds horrible, so let's just wait a minute, is deep in there. What Lynn said, I'm just underlining it. It's like it's so much easier to bear up with a person who's telling you that they're in a condition you yourself don't think you could possibly stand or handle. And yet, just by keeping them company, the principle, my first principle there was, don't let them go home alone. Keep them company. Don't you be scared, because they're a lot safer if you keep them company with it. And you say, so I hear that there's really this strong desire to not live anymore, and you don't know really what's going to happen. And show that I can stand it. And they say, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now? They can't possibly be feeling this way, which is my first reaction.
I'm thinking that unless there's anybody
could
that
have a
has
break
something
now.
immediate, we would have a break, and then when we come back from the break, do a short demonstration and then continue the discussion.
Okay.
Does that sound good to everybody? But if there was something that you were hot to say and didn't get a chance to say it, we'll give you a chance to say it before the...
Okay.
But on the break, somebody who would like to do a demonstration with Jean, come and let us know. I also want to say that through that door, we have 2 restrooms.
Oh, that's a good... Right? I'm actually working with somebody. I put everything that I know about over here, and I can use it if I want to, but I'm just going to pay attention to this person. And it was advertised that this is going to illustrate the theory. Nah, maybe it will, but that'll be an accident. I'm not going to think about the theory. I don't believe that therapy consists of the method that you learned. Like I'm a Gestalt therapist, so if you come to me, you get Gestalt. Never mind. I'm only interested in this person, and whatever I've ever learned may or may not come in. And so take care of yourself, and if you get tired, walk out, because I won't notice. And with that, I invite you to forget about them also.
That's so easy, but okay.
And hello, take your time, come on down. And hello.
Hi. Yeah, so, I feel very nervous, and I think that will subside. But so a little bit of the noise is in me that I feel like I've done this before and shouldn't take the spot. So I kind of waited, and I didn't come and say I want to work, although there was
You've done this before? What did
in
you
the
mean?
chain, and
This kind of...
and
Oh,
Wise
done
Israel
this
was there,
before.
and I
Right.
worked, and I've only been maybe the events of focusing, so I feel like it's like
Was that a good thing?
well, it feels good that I'm doing it. I
Oh,
feel like
okay,
I'm getting
okay,
a lot, but it
okay.
feels this little judgment that I feel like, well,
Of course.
that I'm
Well,
taking all this space, or
okay. So it's a step.
it's just-
It's a step forward for you to be doing it. Sort of, you're taking space.
right. There's a little difficulty in that, but
Yes,
I also feel like
yes.
very
Yes.
fortunate. And
Very-
I'm fortunate to
Yeah. Oh,
be able
sure.
to have this opportunity, and I'm glad that I jumped in when nobody
Yeah,
else
yeah, well,
apparently did.
welcome,
Because I
yeah.
could have stayed there and just waited for somebody else.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not
Yes.
going to pay too much attention to that.
No, but
part and
but
enjoy.
you are pleased a little bit with yourself for doing it. Yes.
And I have a particular issue or thing going on that
So you know what you want to get into, and it's waiting there.
yeah. So I guess those, I don't know, it's a little story that maybe I'll tell you.
Sure.
Trying to see how to do it without going into too many details, but the thing is, my husband is gonna be 60 next week. And I am kind of in a last moment thing, planning a surprise party that will also be renewal of our vows. And this has to do with the TUBA, which is the marriage agreement that we originally had got lost, and he really wanted to replace that. We're doing that, and I figured instead of just giving him that we will do a little ceremony, which I think will definitely please him. So, I mean, obviously it's a surprise, but I think he definitely
You
will.
pretty well expect
I know
him to
that he
be
will
pleased.
be.
Yeah, more than expect,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think we have it's not an easy.
Half a second. Will you close the window, Lynn? Partly the noise as well as the cold.
There's kind of a history. We've been married 12 years, together 15, and it's not been always easy. And although we went through a real good change after maybe a crisis, and we're really much better place.
So it got really better, but there were rough times.
Right, and that's why it is a real celebration, because
Right, it
we
is.
haven't been in this place
Yes,
all the time.
yes, I get it. And there's a lot welling up in you right this minute, so let's welcome that. Be with that, don't rush.
Yeah, so it's something about both the pain of the hardship and
Yes.
the appreciation of who we are. There's like both.
So both are there, both welled up, both are there. There is still the pain from all that, and there's also some celebration that,
Right.
yes, both.
And there's a worry that comes with that, a worry.
Yes.
And the worry is that even though there's the celebration, there's all these things that are still not exactly
Oh, okay.
perfect. There is that thing. There's some
Somebody is nervous that you're not all the way through, or that if there is such a thing, all the way through.
Right.
Right.
And just before I came, we had a little incident which got a little out of, let's say, more out of hand than I would have liked it to be. And it was really hard
So
to
it
be
brought
sitting
it
a week
back.
before this
Yes,
situation
yes,
when things got really.
yes, it brought it back.
It's a little relief just putting it
Yes,
there.
yes. Yes. So just to stand the pain in a way, just to stand for the moment. It's a little relief. Now I'm glad just to be here for a minute or two with the relief and not rush on to anything.
Yeah, so I'm taking you in, sitting
Oh,
with me.
okay. Also, sure.
Got a little nervous when I
Oh
said
yeah, about me. This, yes. But hello. Hello.
that.
Good.
I feel a little confused. I don't know, like there's all these feelings coming up that I think you have to do a little bit of just
Feeling-
having to do with sitting with you and that sense of being understood.
Oh, okay. Just the fact that, right, that here's somebody and I know what you're saying, and it came across. Yes.
Just gonna go in and see what this
Yeah, what it-
discomfort is. I'm not sure if this is related, but I'm sure I will
It
know
came,
after if
right.
I say it.
Say it, then we'll see.
Right. There's this almost like a conflict or struggle between going ahead with something that has such a meaningful statement of like renewing the vows. And wanting to do it because it's that place in me that believes that we are in a good place and that we're very much be a pleasing
Right.
gift.
So there's a strong good side that wants to do this.
And that other part that feels, well, how maybe it's not real if I felt so angry this afternoon.
If that could still happen.
It could still happen. It still gets so frustrating. So
If it could get you that badly, then it doesn't go together.
Doesn't seem to sit well.
Right. Right.
Then comes to me the sense that maybe it's okay if I don't make a big deal out of it. Yes, it's ugly. Yes, I don't want it to continue. Yes, I want to have less of that in my life.
So there's a proposal that you could treat it lightly or something like that.
Yeah, well, lightly seems too light.
Too light.
I don't want to treat it lightly. It's,
Okay.
It is serious enough
it's
that
serious
I want
enough
to
that.
have it more in my
Okay.
life.
Okay.
But I don't have to maybe treat it so heavy as if this is a disaster and everything.
It's
else
changed
is
everything
changed.
now.
Yesterday
Yes.
I felt so happy and
Right.
loving and like we were in such a great place, and suddenly an incident can take it all away.
Take it all, change the whole thing.
Right.
And maybe it says, right? Maybe you don't have to let it be that big.
That big, yeah. Not to dismiss it, not to make it
Right.
light,
It's a very strong thing too.
but
It
not to
didn't want me to say lightly at all. It's definitely there and you don't want it in your life.
Right.
Just that maybe it doesn't have to change the whole thing.
What brings to me is the sense of, like I don't know if it's my own judgment or fear of outside judgment, that if I tolerate such ugly situations, then I'm stuck in a very bad situation.
I see. Okay, so part of it, I'm sure you feel it, but part of it is like an attack on you. it says, oh, you shouldn't have this happen, or you shouldn't be tolerating it, or you shouldn't. Is that right? It's like
Yeah.
it's coming at you and attacking you there.
Right. And I sometimes wonder, and I say that to Sam, I feel like, well, all these words or whatever of love, and suddenly will come something so not loving in an interaction that I feel like, well, how can it be love? How can you love me when you will get so?
It seems impossible to. I see. It makes it. Is that right? It's like, what is it in him you don't understand that seems to undercut the good stuff? Is that right?
Sure.
Like you're saying, if that can happen, then you have to doubt the loving.
Right. Right.
It's like, how can somebody be like that and be also loving?
Right. It's hard to have it somehow doesn't feel loving, that behavior, and it's hard to think that somebody's so loving can in moments get nervous or sad or angry or impatient or whatever.
So the loved or the loving or something, the loved, loving place in you can't understand. How can it flip like that?
Yeah, and as you said that, I feel like I lose my own feeling of love in those moments.
There. You lose your loving.
And
You lose your loving.
Feelings in those moments.
Yeah.
Then it's hard. Like, how can I have this ceremony of love?
Which comes from the loving feelings, and here they
Then I
get
feel
lost.
like it's not real. Or not.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this if I don't feel it.
If you don't feel the loving, but you lose your loving feeling in those moments.
And I guess there's some wish to be able to hold that love, even if I don't like behavior or interaction.
That the loving wouldn't go away, even though you don't like this.
Right. Yeah.
But
Not to go to that, just the place that I go to, that's a very, self-righteous, or like, this is wrong, I'm right.
it's a not nice place. It's a not good place.
Right.
You lose your loving, and also where you go is not a happy place.
Right. So if I said it's like I want something. Solution.
Well, here's what you do. Yeah, right. It would be nice. Yes. Yes. It feels like you won. Somebody, not you, but somebody somewhere wouldn't have to lose their loving when something ugly comes. You were saying you wish you could. You wish you could keep your loving.
Right. Yeah. It's like I know it's there because I don't.
Oh yeah, it doesn't actually disappear. It just can't be there.
In that moment.
Yeah. Because it gets attacked, or because we don't know. Because it feels like it can't be there while that's happening.
Right.
Or while you think of that either, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be there at the same time.
Right. What comes is that it feels like a protection by being attacking back or being,
It feels unsafe. It needs protecting from that,
Yeah.
whatever that is. It's like,
It brings ugly places in me where I can be pretty
yeah, sure.
vicious or unkind.
Yes, yes. But it needs, it's a protection.
Right. It's very painful in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
I felt attacked. It feels like an attack.
Feels like an attack.
I'll tell you what you did wrong. I can come with a whole list and how.
So it doesn't.
There he says, my fault.
It doesn't know it doesn't know a way of protecting itself that you like. It goes to this counterattack, right? Which is all understandable, but you don't like it.
Right. Okay, I got this wand to tell myself that I don't have to do that.
We don't have another way, but there could be another way.
Right.
Let's see if I can say that back. You would like to say to it, you don't have to go to this bad place and fight back in that way that you don't like. Mm-hmm. There is another way to take care of yourself or to protect yourself, or you don't have to let it roll over you or something. But we don't have that yet.
What it is.
What it would be that you would be pleased with or could stand. Yeah. We don't have a response or a reaction that would take care of you and him, I guess. There could be such a thing.
Noticing an impatience with wanting to know that.
Okay. So there, yeah, of course. It's hard to leave the space there where something could come because it feels it would be so nice if I just, yeah. I'd say that space again. It's like, well, you don't like where it puts you. Mm-hmm. And there needs to be some protection so that doesn't just roll over you or, I don't know if that rollover is right, but there's some protection it wants. Mm-hmm. And it would be some kind of protective way of taking care of you that wouldn't be the same kind of thing that you don't like. It wouldn't be me. Yes.
I don't like that. I don't like being in that place.
Yes.
I have to ask myself what that might be. That would be a better way to protect myself. Noticing a little discomfort here.
Something there is.
It's like a fear that I won't find it.
Oh, yeah. The question is too fast, too. Like you're supposed to find somewhere you're scared you won't find it. I'll just say back what we have is better than a question. You were saying clearly that you don't like what he's doing in those moments, and you don't like what it makes you do back. And you were already in a third position, because you were saying I don't want to accept this, and I don't like what it does, what it makes me do.
And then just there's that fear that I won't have another way.
I felt like it was another way already, just to say, I don't want to go to this, and I don't accept this, or something. I don't know. I made something out of it, I think.
Sounds good.
I refuse
Just
to.
for the moment.
I refuse to go where it sends me,
Right.
and I will not say this is okay or something. I don't know. My mind is producing answers for you, I think.
I like it, and I'm very afraid that that in the moment I won't be able to
Yeah,
do that.
that's the further thing. There it is. Sure. You're saying, well, it's really easy to think that, but then you won't be able to do it because it's too upsetting and so many things and what. That you won't be able to.
I'm just kind of practicing. I don't like this, but I'm not going to do that. I don't know. It's like I need a way to know that this is going to be different than what I've
Yes.
said before.
Yes. Yes. It wants a way to know that it'll be different. It's afraid it won't be different.
Yeah. Strong urge to protect, or to be right, or to do something.
So we can hear from that is a strong urge that says, you're wrong, I'm right, or I'm fighting back, or
Right.
let that come in more. It's a good energy in itself in some way. I know you don't like it, but okay, I got it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of power.
I
in
got
it.
a smile for
Power
that.
to,
Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
brighter. I'm
Amen.
right, you're wrong.
Let's
you
have that.
don't
Yeah,
care.
let's have that power, and then we can vary how it comes or something, right? Because there's a smile with it.
Right,
It's
because
well, come on. don't put it
right,
all
you're wrong.
away.
It's
Right. There
but
might
it's-
be a better thing
but
to
it's-
say or something, but it's not a.
But I know it's like I want a different way. To have
Oh
my
yeah,
right
you
power.
don't want to just act it out. You don't want to just pour it out or dump it or whatever. But
Right,
there's something right about the energy. Then whatever is a better way will be with that. It won't be without that.
Right. So what I heard you say is that to hold my power,
Yeah,
power and
yeah,
energy,
and
but
then
in a
ask
different
for
way.
what would I like better than to dump it
Mm-hmm.
or to.
Yeah. How can I stay strong and powerful
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
and not be whatever vicious? So go into that.
Yeah, how can you be strong and powerful and still what? I don't know.
So
Not go into that, yeah.
right.
But strong and powerful.
Without acting it out or without. Yeah, it's gonna be clear that I don't like this.
Yeah, okay. I don't like this.
I feel my body
It's
that,
getting,
but
yeah.
have
I'm
that
just going to
fear.
keep saying back.
How do I
What's
get them in the moment?
I don't like this. But then there's a fear that you'll just slide into a. Is that the fear?
Yeah.
Ah, yeah, okay.
It's so easy somehow. to
Uh-huh.
go into that. What came when I said that maybe this is not going to be believable, or will this be strong enough?
Yeah, to hold the wave of anger that comes there, or whatever that's called. Right. It's right there, and it says, no, this isn't enough. This isn't going to work.
This is not,
Right.
I'm not there yet.
And what will happen? What's it more? Is it a, what is it? It says we don't have an answer, but what is it? Is it a fear? Is it a too angry? What is down in there?
So much anger. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Real,
hurt, but
really,
anger.
right. Really, really anger, and then hurt and anger sort of.
Yeah, it comes with sense of being wronged.
Yeah, you didn't deserve this. This was wrong. This shouldn't happen. You're being wrongly something, attacked, punished, something.
When I was in this place, part of me came and I don't know if it was a reaction to how I thought people will see me, maybe a little bit, but also like an inner place. I'm not that, I don't know, I felt like a martyr or like a victim. I'm not such a victim in general or in relationships.
So you wouldn't
I don't feel
right?
feel
You
like
wouldn't like the impression that you're just a suffering.
right. Well,
passive
outside, but I'm
victim.
feeling it. I'm saying it also to myself.
Yeah,
That it's
yeah.
maybe it's suddenly felt. I felt it in me, like, oh, I'm a victim. I don't know.
So you, yeah. So you,
It's like so kind of almost wondering, like, what?
yeah. You got to a further spot where you're looking at your reaction. You're saying, right? Saying, how come I sound like that? I don't really feel like a victim or like a passive that gets run over. That's not really me, and yet I sound like that. What is that? Why does it feel like that? Or where does that come from? You got to a wider you.
What?
You got to a wider sense of yourself just now. You're saying, oh, well, I'm not really just that
Right.
victimized, unfairly treated person.
Yeah, but I think that reaction comes from that place of feeling a victim.
Yeah, yeah. Does that go way back in your experience? Is that from long ago or from you, or just now you don't know where that comes from?
In a different way. Yeah, not exactly in the place of victim, but maybe in a place of.
It might connect, but it's not so clear that it does. It's,
very different.
but
Very
you are.
different dynamics.
But you are. So it's it could connect, but this is. But you're now very much saying, yes, that makes me feel like a victim, but that's not my general way of being.
In those moments, I think it takes
Yeah.
me to that place. I don't deserve it.
Yeah, it's unfair and
unfairly judged.
Right, and a lot of anger. But it hurts in anger. Sure. Let's stop, but not yet. Let's stop slowly, okay? Let's just take a minute and see where you are.
Yeah. So I just feel like I want to come back to the I don't want this.
It wants to strongly affirm, no, this is not for me, I don't want it, I don't accept it, it isn't right. It wants to say that very strongly.
Right. And not go into this.
Too focused on the solution, we miss the process.
And you miss the person.
We miss the person and the process, I mean, in a way.
Yeah, something like
Stay
that.
with-
The process is
we don't
bigger.
have a solution yet, but we have this space. Let's stay with this. See what happens.
Yeah. Well, if we just don't decide on one or the other, we're all right, I think.
We can stay open.
As soon as we decide on one or the other, then I get upset. people who tell me that the train ride is important and where you're going is not. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I mean, sometimes there's a better place to go than where I thought I was going. That's okay with me, you know.
It really is time for us to
Stop.
If there's anything urgent, please feel free to come and say thank you all very, very much.
Thank you very much.
For coming.
Thank you.